Fox News operates like clockwork on some days. Other days it goes off the rails. Live on air, tempers flare, voices break, and control slips. Mid-rant, Jeanine Pirro burst. Geraldo Rivera stormed off set. Debates were quickly transformed into yelling battles between Sean Hannity and Eric Bolling. Cameras kept rolling while producers rushed. These moments weren't planned, and that's why people couldn't look away. These are the Fox News hosts who lost control on live TV. In the aftermath of the 2017 Charlottesville protest, where a radical man drove a car into a crowd, leading to a deadly incident for Heather Heyer and numerous major injuries for others, national attention shifted to President Trump's words about what had happened. At the center of the situation was Melissa Francis, who became clearly overwhelmed on TV while discussing the disturbing event. The event, organized by fringe political parties opposing the removal of a Confederate monument, ignited considerable debate about race, extremist ideology, and prospective leadership across the country. Outnumbered, Fox News host Melissa Francis sought to justify President Trump's comments, particularly his observation that there were extremely good people on both sides of the Charlottesville fight. Francis responded that Trump never said equal blame and insisted that he didn't want to praise the extremist political organizations. As you might anticipate, her co-hosts promptly reacted and it led to friction that caused her to lose her mind. Francis started to cry as the conversation progressed. She tried to express how uncomfortable she was with the topic, but her voice broke and she started crying. Francis said, "I am so uncomfortable having this conversation because I know what's in my heart and I know that I don't think anyone is different, better, or worse based on the color of their skin. But I feel like there is nothing any of us can say right now without being judged." This was a highly emotional moment as she was struggling to navigate defending the president while addressing a highly sensitive national issue. Co-host Harris Faulkner sought to calm the scene down and steer it away from the confrontation. Too many individuals were emotional at the time, according to Faulkner. She talked about the broad national emotional responses and said that it was normal for Francis to display emotion on television, adding that people had been sobbing across the country in response to the events and discussions around Charlottesville. After the show, Francis took to Twitter to admit her emotional reaction. In her tweet, she thanked many for their support and claimed that he was embarrassed about becoming so upset. Still, her moment of losing it on live TV spread viral, but the following Fox News stars found themselves at the center of a gun control argument with loud shouting. One of the most talked about Fox News programs is The Five, where co-hosts Greg Gutfeld and Geraldo Rivera once got into a very intense on-air disagreement on gun control, public safety, and significant national tragedies. Music, it progressed beyond a usual panel disagreement into evident irritation and rising voices. The conversation started when Rivera presented statistics and opinions emphasizing the frequency and significance of gun-related occurrences in the United States. Rivera's line of argument concentrated on the larger context of serious crime, contending that Americans were dealing with serious and ongoing problems with gun-related harm, including some tragic incidents that affected families and communities, while Gutfeld questioned how those numbers were being used in the discussion. In response, Gutfeld sharply criticized Rivera's use of figures, saying that much of what was being labeled as gun-related incidents in media discussions was inflated by including organized crime-related incidents instead of focusing on the narrower category of indiscriminate public shooting incidents. The peak of the confrontation came when Gutfeld used blunt, heated language against Rivera, accusing him of misrepresenting the data and saying, "You're being disingenuous. You're saying like all these things are happening all the time and you're making it sound like people don't care about innocent victims." During the back and forth, Gutfeld kept interrupting Rivera because he felt Rivera was dominating the conversation. It eventually became a screaming match with Gutfeld shouting, "Let somebody else talk." Rivera didn't, yield and their voices talked over each other with fellow hosts stepping in to try to moderate and bring the discussion back on track. The main point of the disagreement was based on their different ideas of what constitutes a meaningful policy response to serious crime and public safety issues in America. Gutfeld's view focused on statistics and he didn't want to endorse sweeping calls for policy changes, while Rivera mostly talked about the human impact of gun-related incidents and talked about addressing firearms and related policy issues more directly. This placed them right opposite each other in this conflict. After the most intense climax of the argument, Goodfeld admitted that he and Rivera would go back and forth over this until the day they die because they have a never-ending divide between them on issues of crime, guns, and public, music, safety. Rivera responded saying that they would continue debating as long as you don't shoot me. These Fox News stars lost it on TV because of an argument, but the next one burst into tears after learning a colleague had passed away. When Roger Ailes, the co-founder and longtime CEO of Fox News, died in May 2017 at age 77, his music passing prompted an emotional response from some at the network, and no one expected that Janice Dean would lose it on live TV because of this news. As Fox News anchors read the announcement and reflected on his impact, Dean became visibly emotional on air, admitting to Ailes' role in her career. She said, "I wouldn't be here without that man," and recalled that when she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, Ailes personally reached out, telling her that Fox would do whatever they could do for her family because they are all part of a family. She added that he would be missed at the channel, emphasizing the personal support he provided to her during a difficult time. Viewers were surprised that Dean was crying on TV because of Ailes' death, as she described how he offered her tangible support in her moments of personal vulnerability. But you can't blame everyone for being surprised because around that time Ailes was widely known for serious workplace allegations which even got him kicked out of Fox News. He had been forced out of leadership at Fox after former anchor Gretchen Carlson filed a professional misconduct lawsuit in 2016 exposing a series of similar allegations from multiple women. Ailes had denied those allegations at that time, but it led to investigations and major changes in the network's culture and leadership. To make her reaction even surprising, Dean has discussed the experience that she had with Ailes. She remembered moments when Ailes acted in ways she later described as inappropriate or unprofessional, such as his unusual request to meet at a hotel and awkward comments that left her feeling confused. She admitted that these encounters happened, but she found herself on the hot seat when she said they weren't exactly deeply troubling. Music, instead, she called him a complex person who gave her career opportunities. While Dean lost it because of grief, the next Fox News stars fought so hard that their mic was cut. When Lauren Duca, then a young writer for Teen Vogue, appeared on Tucker Carlson Tonight in December 2016 to discuss her opinions about Ivanka Trump and politics, the guest and interviewer quickly lost it on live TV. The interview began with Carlson questioning Duca's commentary on an incident that involved harassment directed at Ivanka Trump aboard a flight. It quickly became a back-and-forth argument. Duca tried to clarify her position that no one deserves harassment, music, including Ivanka Trump, and that criticism of the Trump family's politics was expected given their influence. But as Duca tried to speak, music, Carlson kept on interrupting her, pressing her on tweets she had written about Ivanka and her father's presidency. He challenged her language and interpretations, even focusing on her use of terms like sinister complicity. Music, Duca responded directly, saying that discussions about political influence and policy had to be looked at carefully. The conflict became even worse when Carlson shifted his line of attack to Duca's work on Teen Vogue, bringing up articles she had written about pop culture and celebrity. After reading headlines about topics such as Ariana Grande's thigh-high boots, Carlson literally dismissed Duca, music, saying, "You should stick to the thigh-high boots. You're better at that." Duca immediately challenged him, saying that enjoying pop culture topics didn't disqualify her from serious political discourse. She said, "A woman can love Ariana Grande and her thigh-high boots and still discuss politics." Things became worse when the production team quickly cut off her microphone and she responded directly to Carlson's closing insult by calling his comments sexist. Music, the conflict didn't stop with live TV. After the interview, Duca took to Twitter and criticized Carlson, calling him an enemy of rational discourse. Meanwhile, Carlson later said that he regretted how the segment unfolded and that he lost his composure. While Carlson found himself in a conflict with a guest on TV, the next, music, Fox News stars had a shouting match over a major policy. On the Fox News show, Hannity, host Sean Hannity, and correspondent Geraldo Rivera engaged in a debate over immigration policy in the U.S. southern border after a young American was suspected to have passed away at the hands of an undocumented immigrant. Hannity used the tragic death of Pierce Corcoran in Tennessee, a 22-year-old who had lost his life in an incident authorities said involved someone in the country illegally, to argue for stronger border security and construction of a border wall. He pressed Rivera, saying to him directly, "We have a 22-year-old who lost his life. Stop. He made the issue seem like one of life and death that demanded government action. On the other hand, Rivera admitted that the family was experiencing pain and said he was sympathetic to their suffering, but he objected to using individual tragedies as a political tool to advance policy arguments. He said that it was unfair to use those anecdotes to make a political argument, and even if the event is tragic, it shouldn't justify extreme policy prescriptions. The exchange quickly caused interrupted sentences and overlapping dialogue. Hannity continued to insist that the government had a responsibility to protect American citizens and they had to implement broader measures, but Rivera stated his point that political leaders should seek compromise and address immigration in a more comprehensive and humane way. Hannity challenged Rivera's framing, arguing that protecting the border was a major safety issue. As he pressed the point, he kept asking, "How many tragedies does it take?" Rivera countered that while immigration policy and tragedies involving undocumented individuals are political discussions, Americans should find solutions collectively, music, rather than just acting out of fear. Another time that Fox News stars lost it live on TV was when Jeanine Pirro and Juan Williams found themselves engaged in a shouting match over Trump's impeachment. On an episode of The Five, co-host Jeanine Pirro and Juan Williams became locked in a tense and shouting-filled disagreement over the Democrats' impeachment process against President Donald Trump. The conflict started when Pirro dismissed the impeachment efforts, deriding Democratic motives and minimizing the inquiry's substance. She called the impeachment process a bunch of hogwash, telephone, and rumors. She also added that they should get over it because it was all hearsay. Williams didn't agree and he quickly pushed back as a prominent liberal voice. He pointed to polling data which showed political concern about the impeachment and potential removal of Trump from office. He noted an ABC News poll, Music, where most of the respondents viewed Trump's request for a foreign leader to investigate a political rival as wrong and a slight majority supported impeachment and removal. Pirro didn't relent. She turned the focus back toward what she saw as media bias, saying that they were trashing Trump every day and that the hearings were just political attacks against Trump. Williams responded sharply, challenging her dismissal of facts and the framing of the process. When Pirro told him to stop, Williams rebutted and said, "If you're a judge, you should know better." As the two of them started shouting over each other, other panelists tried to interject. When Williams tried to clarify that impeachment was based on the Constitution, Pirro insisted, saying, "Do not go there." The two talked over each other, visibly frustrated, and they descended into overlapping remarks and raised tones. The five hosts tried to mediate the exchange. Jesse Waters jumped in amidst the shouting to steer the conversation away from direct confrontation and back towards their political discussions. This was what eventually allowed the debate to die down before it became something worse. But one time, two Fox News stars got into an argument so intense, they dropped swear words. On a September 2025 episode, co-host Greg Goodfeld and liberal panelist Jessica Tarluf became involved in an intense exchange, one of the more shocking conflicts in the history of Fox News. The focus of their conflict was on how to interpret politically motivated incidents, music, and assign responsibility for them. The discussion was framed around the fatal attack on conservative activist Charlie Kirk, music, and a broader debate over whether politically motivated incidents are predominantly a problem on one side of the political spectrum or a shared issue. The conflict started when Goodfeld dismissed calls for additional context and said that what matters the most was the trend of violence coming from the left-leaning extremists. He literally said, "We don't need more information. What is interesting here is why this is only happening on the left and not the right." When Tarlov challenged the framing by mentioning other major incidents, including the loss of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband earlier that summer, the exchange became confrontational. Goodfeld implied that the public reaction was different because Hortman wasn't a household name when she died, and Tarlov responded saying, "So, she doesn't matter." At that point, Goodfeld lost his composure and used inappropriate language on air. This profanity stunned the studio and viewers, and the moment quickly circulated on social media. After their argument, they both calmed down. Goodfeld later apologized to viewers for the on-air swear, admitting that using explicit language on air during a live broadcast was not appropriate, even if they were in the middle of a heated debate. Music, Taraf also spoke, saying that she never wanted to diminish the tragedy of these incidents, but to caution against simple explanations. She clarified that she was horrified by each tragic incident and advocated for careful analysis before drawing a conclusion. Even the comst Fox News star has lost it live on TV. Starting with Martha McClung. Veteran Fox News anchor Martha McClung encountered a quite sharp on-air challenge from a guest during a segment of The Story with Martha McClung. She snapped back and defended herself in a way that broke away from her usual calm demeanor. The exchange happened when McClung was discussing educational outcomes and policy issues with Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, during a discussion about a Supreme Court case involving parental, music, opt-out rights and LGBTQ-themed school materials. McClung was presenting her argument about educational priorities, focusing on literacy and mathematics performance in schools, but Weingarten kept interrupting her and addressing her by calling her sweetheart. During the back and forth, Weingarten said, "Martha, Martha, sweetheart, sweetheart, listen to me." In an attempt to pivot the conversation back to her own ideas, McClung immediately cut her off and objected to the phrase, probably finding it condescending. She instantly said, "Please don't call me sweetheart." Her words were firm and dismissive, and Weingarten had to apologize before she kept on speaking. This moment stood out because it represented a rare instance of McClung visibly standing her ground and reacting strongly to a perceived slight from a guest. Viewers and commentators noted that McClung's reaction was swift and direct, and many on social media praised her for setting a boundary and reinforcing her role as the interviewer rather than allowing herself to be talked down to by a guest. And finally, if there's one Fox News star that has lost it a lot on live TV, it's Brian Kilmeade, a longtime co-host of Fox and Friends, who has been involved in multiple tense and controversial on-air exchanges. In those moments, he lost patience or sparked heated reactions during live broadcasts and has had to apologize in public many times. In a September 2025 segment about the passing of a Ukrainian refugee while talking with co-hosts about homelessness and mental health, Kilmeade suggested a drastic and unacceptable solution. The remark in reference to mentally ill homeless individuals generated widespread criticism online and in the press for its severity and callousness. Kilmeade later issued an on-air apology, acknowledging the remark was extremely callous and stating, "I apologize for that extremely callous remark," recognizing that many homeless people deserve empathy and compassion. Another time, he openly challenged co-hosts who appeared to minimize geopolitical threats, insisting repeatedly that Vladimir Putin is the antagonist in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and calling out phrasing he viewed as off-base, saying, "And Vladimir Putin is the bad guy," which led to direct responses and rebuttals from fellow hosts. Another notable confrontation that he had was during a live interview with Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy on Fox and Friends. Kilmeade sharply questioned Ramaswamy's policy positions on the Russia-Ukraine war, repeatedly challenging him on whether he was comfortable with Russia taking as much of Ukraine as they want and pressing him on U.S. aid, which led to nearly 5 minutes of back and forth with raised rhetoric and competing assertions about foreign policy and national interest. The exchange involved Kilmeade insisting that conflict in Europe mattered to U.S. interests while Ramaswamy pushed back with different strategic perspectives, and audience applause punctuated the heated moment. Kilmeade's assertive, combative, and often unfiltered style on air has made him clash with guests and colleagues often on live TV, sometimes even losing it in front of everyone. These Fox News stars were passionate about their topics, but that sometimes caused them to get stuck in conflict and lose it in front of everyone. Which of these incidents shocked you the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.